Okay, we are live on YouTube and recording. So I call this special meeting to order of February 11th, 2021. Would you stand for the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag
of
of the United
States of America
and
and
to the republic
for which it stands,
which it
one
stands,
nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Okay, Kate, if you would do the roll call, please.
Councilwoman Anowen,
Here.
Councilwoman Hagen DePew,
Here,
Councilman Hewitt,
Here.
Councilman Paddock,
Here.
Supervisor Baden.
Here. Okay. Our first item on the agenda tonight is we have received a request to consider a zoning district change to include a property in the Economic Enterprise Overlay District. It is from Walnut Brook LLC. The property is located at 5688 Route 209 in Accord. It is 15.4 acres. It is in the B zoning district, the business. It is also in the aquifer protection and the floodplain overlay zoning district. So we have several people here from the requesting side. Who wants to speak? Do you want to start, Mr. Dannenberg, or do you want to, Kanan, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'd love to say a few words. Thanks. My name's Kanan. I'm one of the partners in the proposed Walnut Brook development. It's an adaptive reuse, and this is something that we specialize in and like to do. We like to take things that are existing and find the best purpose for them. There's the lowest impact on the environment in this way. It's not always the cheapest or easiest, but oftentimes you're creating an environment that people tend to like better than a cookie cutter development. And we really like to work with municipalities to create these win-win situations. For us, what's really important is that there's a three-way win with the municipality. Of course, we need to have a project that's feasible and that profits at the end. And we want the tenants to win. We want to ultimately attract a tenancy that's stable and long-term. We need to make a good project. We self-fund. So at the end of the project, we go to a bank and try to get a mortgage to take us out. And it has to be a good project with stable tenancy at that time for us to get the financing that we need. And we intend to hold things long-term. We want to manage them and have good relationships and to have tenants that are happy and that are staying for a long time in a great project makes the whole thing easier for us for years to come. So the former Maybrook Lodge, I think it was the Maybrook Farm community for a brief minute there, represents to us a great opportunity to reuse and rehabilitate some structures that are laid out on a nice piece of land that's accessible, and we can make good quality housing here. The access seems great. It doesn't seem like we will have impact on the environment. Of course, all the studies have to be done, and we're committed to that process through SECRA and working with you guys and the county. And in general, what we think would be a target for us is we'd like to get 17 units of, again, good quality, free market housing, rental. And some of these would be two-family units in existing buildings. Some would be more. The lodge building, of course, would divide into more, but the ultimate density would be fewer units than what the lodge originally had. The number of 17 came to us because it seems to fit within the buildings the way we conceive the reuse of them. Of course, some of the structures won't be reusable. We'll have to take down certain elements that aren't structurally sound, that wouldn't be compliant. And, regrettably, some of those structures will be lost. But what we like to do is stay within the existing footprints as much as possible. So we would shore up what remains, save it, make it new again. And that said, we're aware of the need for housing in Ulster County, of housing that people who live in the communities and work in the communities can afford. And we're open to discussing with the board, with the town, if more units could work on this site, if that would be amenable to the town. It's something that we think that we might be able to do in a way that keeps, the units generous in size and keeps the lot spacious and a nice place to live. So that's the general overview. We submitted a proposed site plan to the town. We have a survey that we did to show elevations. And one of the structures that actually was the last structure to be inhabited when we purchased the property, that's what the former owners were inhabiting, would be within the 100-foot setback rule for the stream. So that would be, in its current location and under that rule, non-compliant. However, we did the elevations and it's 20 feet above the FEMA flood line, the spot point of the stream at its highest point. So that is a structure that it would be best if we didn't have to take it down. It's in good shape. That would be an excellent candidate for bringing, one or two units into. And if we didn't have to tear that one down, that'd be great. But of course, because it's non-conforming, that would be something we'd leave up to you to help us understand. And we have on the call another partner, Kerry Dannenberg. He's a senior partner. We've got Jeff Coyne, who's also a partner, and he'd be managing the day-to-day construction and also working with us to manage long-term. We also have Paul on the line, who I think he's still here. He's our engineer and architect on the project. And at this point, we'd like to open it up for any questions that we can answer and discussions we can have that,
Well, what I would like to do, if first, Mr. Dannenberg, do you want to add anything else, or?
I'll just give you a little bit about my background because I don't think I've met anybody that's been on the board. I had owned a 60-person construction company for 35 years. I'm a developer. We own a real estate company in New York. We also own a mortgage company and we own a property management company. So we'll be handling all the aspects of it in-house. So we'll service the property ourselves. In it, what we like to do is create housing that's like fair priced housing. We would also probably want to do like 20% of it into workforce housing, so that we would be able to get our taxes based upon an income approach, so that this way we can understand what our costs are. And we're planning to bring these things on market for somewhere around between $1,200 and $1,500 per unit. That's what our target numbers are. So when we first looked at our project, we were looking at somewhere like 15 to 17. We certainly would, if you felt like you had a need for more housing, build a couple of small buildings additional on it. So if you wanted, if you thought it was a good fit to have more, or you had a need for more on the site, we certainly would consider putting up maybe one or two more small buildings.
Okay. What I'd like to do is I'm going to share my screen here with the Economic Enterprise Overlay code. Is everybody seeing it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. What I'd like to do, and for both the board and the applicant, sort of full disclosure, this is our second go around with the Economic Enterprise Overlay District. This is a much larger project than the first one we did. So, and two of the board members that are on the board now were not on it when we did our first one. So I wanted to kind of walk through the process for everybody so we're all on the same page, if you'll sort of humor me, and then we'll get to the specifics of the property after that. But I wanted to just start from the beginning.
Mike, before you start, can I ask a question?
Sure.
The question I have to ask of the principals are, how did you find out about the Economic Overlay District as opposed to staying with the planning board?
I'm not sure exactly how that came out. I know that we had meetings with the planning board in front of the building department. So we've had discussions. So I'm not really sure how that came about. But we did explore many different possible avenues.
Okay, I'm curious because after speaking with the planning board chair, you realize this process has actually held your project up somewhat by waiting for this process that we're starting tonight to be concluded or started and concluded.
But it's also unique in that you're looking to not rip down buildings and preserve something as part of our history. And that's why we created this.
I understand that, but we don't know what the planning board would have done.
Well, I think they would have liked us to take down a lot of the buildings. So in our discussions with them, we were also looking at, we probably would not have done the project. And maybe
I think the only building that I recall after speaking with the planning board chair would have been the one in the floodplain.
I think that when we were looking at the feasibility of the project, it would have been more like 8 units. And so when you would discount all of the different parcels, all of the different components of each lot, of each part of the ground, each acre that we're in, it really would have boiled down to something we probably would not have done.
Can I just, I feel like maybe I missed something. I'm sorry to I'm feeling like maybe slightly underprepared.
Sure.
Could someone just explain to me, so the reason, if I could just hear it, the narrative for considering, because we're just considering this for the Economic Enterprise Overlay District. So what are the tensions? What would this resolve? Or I'm just...
So Aaron, what the Economic Enterprise Overlay does is it is designed for adaptive reuse. And that's exactly what I'm about to do as I go through the code and step through it. Your question is exactly what I was starting to do when I put the code up.
Okay.
In
and
answer
Keenan
to
said that. Keenan
right.
said adaptive reuse. Okay, that I just was like, what am I missing? Okay.
So this code was added to our town code in 2018, as you can see on the screen, with local law number 3. It was in response to a project that wouldn't have happened and couldn't happen under our traditional zoning. It was modeled after Rosendale did a very similar type of thing. Mike Moriello was the attorney who worked with the Rosendale on that. He mentioned to the applicant from the previous application that, hey, you might want to think about this. We have a town attorney who works for both towns. Mary Lou and I looked at Rosendale's, put this together, got it adopted back in 2018. We have one success story so far on Lucas Avenue, a project that couldn't have done what they wanted under traditional zoning. This is adaptive reuse of structures that either are being underutilized or are blighted buildings or are flat out vacant buildings. So this is designed to, the town board can create this economic EEO overlay over as another zoning district to encourage the reuse of existing structures rather than tearing down and building new. And in return for that, there is potentially some benefit to the developer in that the town board can, because it's a legislative code, the town board has the ability to waiver legislation that the planning board doesn't. The planning board has to adhere to a strict interpretation of the code, or they have to send the person to the zoning board of appeals. This allows flexibility in things like density, in things like setbacks. So the town board reviews it from a zoning perspective, which is we would go through it, we grant the EEO zoning district, we then send the project to the planning board for a site plan review rather than a special use. The planning board reviews it from a health and safety perspective. They look at things like parking, lighting, the sort of the nuts and bolts of the actual construction, whereas we view it more from an administrative and benefit to the town. We weigh the pros and the cons of the project. So that's in a nutshell of what this district does. To answer B's question, I'll be very upfront and honest. I suggested to Mr. Dannenberg that he consider looking at this section of code because I thought his project fit this type of district. It's creating rental housing. It is taking a former property that has been underutilized or not really utilized much at all for a while, and could potentially be a win-win for everybody. So I suggested he take a look at this, and if he thought it was something that was feasible to him, that he should apply to the code enforcement officer for that. He chose to do that. So that is the answer to the question. He could have continued with the planning board through his site plan and special use permit that he was going through. He chose to change his direction. If we decide we're not going to offer the EEO, he can always go back to that application. So that's the answer to why he is here in front of us. So starting from the beginning, this is, as I said, it's a legislative act. We have our application in that it was applied to the code enforcement officer under a zoning permit, and Mr. Davis has referred it to us as a request to rezone the property for an EEO district. We do not have an application form. The information that was supplied to me was what was supplied to the planning board. It is a site plan. It is a survey. We can look through those things, see what additional information we need. This is a preliminary meeting today to determine next steps. So this is the equivalent of a pre-app meeting on the planning board or the ZBA. We have an application. As a town board, we have to establish a fee for this. We do not have a fee structure for it. They have already paid the planning board for a site plan and special use, a special use and a subdivision, because multifamily housing requires a subdivision approval as well. We can discuss as a town board if we feel that that amount would be comparable and could be applied to this. We can determine that at a later time. These are a very unique circumstance. These are going to always be a property by property occurrence because no two reviews are going to be the same. We reserve the right to consider or not consider any petition submitted under this article. By scheduling this meeting with the developer, I'm taking that we are considering it. It is permitted, the adaptive reuse of these associated lands. And then under approval on an EEO by the board, the applicant is required to apply to the planning board for site plan approval, as I said before. Submission shall include all documents, plans that the zoning chapter asks for a site plan approval. This is what has to be provided. It's application, which we have. It is made under Walnut Brook LLC. Description of, now these A, B, C, and D, Kanan and Mr. Dannenberg, you probably will need to amend your narrative to include just a synopsis of these four things, the A, B, C, and D. You have said it in so many words, but we kind of need it in writing, so we have a document that we can have in our file that we can forward to the various boards and commissions that have to review this process. So if you can, you have a copy of this, correct? Or if not, I can email you a copy of this. So if you can review the A, B, C, and D of this and submit that to us in due time, that would be appreciated. We will also need a full environmental assessment form. I believe you may have already done one for the planning board. You could resubmit that to us, or you could do a new one if you prefer. The conceptual development plan you have already drawn for us. You have a survey. So all those things have been addressed, I believe. We can look at your survey map and your site plan and see if anything needs to be added to it. You have shown the flooding. I don't believe there are any wetlands on your property. I think there are some on the neighboring property, but not on yours.
There are floodplain.
Floodplain, I was saying wetlands. The floodplain they have shown on their plan. The approximate locations of the buildings, you have shown that. The proposed parking and the internal driveways, you have shown all of that. The water supply and method of delivery to the site, you're utilizing the on-site well, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you have, I believe you've told me you were already in contact with the health department. Obviously, we would need to include them in this dialogue. We would need approval from them that the existing well has sufficient quality and quantity for the number of units you're requesting.
Sure.
Disposal of sanitary waste, I don't know if you have addressed that in the existing, would you have a central or multiple dumpster areas that would then be picked up on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis or something like that?
I don't think that we've addressed that ourselves. I mean, that's something that could easily be handled, but I don't think that, I think it wasn't really the most important thing for us.
Okay.
Right.
We will eventually need to come up with a plan, and that would need to be, if those locations would need to be shown on your site plan to make sure that they receive adequate screening, adequate access. So eventually, before a final approval could be made, that's an element of the plan that would need to be included.
Have they addressed their sewer system, Mike? What type of septic, above ground? What are they doing?
That hasn't been addressed yet.
It has not been addressed, I don't believe. But what is your plan for septic, since it's being asked?
Is our architect on the line? Paul?
He was.
I think we lost Paul.
No, he's there.
Okay.
He's muted though. He would need to unmute himself.
Yeah. Oh, hi.
Okay.
There he is.
Yes, I have been in discussion with the health department, and we're talking about the system being located behind the former hotel on the site. And it would be basically at each of the small residences, we would put a septic tank. And from there, the gray water would go to a large collection area and would have a field. It may be a raised bed. We have a high groundwater table out there and extensive dense soil. So it looks like that it will be at least a partially raised bed system.
Have you done any perk tests yet?
Yes, I have. I've done a series of perk tests and deep pit tests on the site. And we came up with, and while I was running the perks, the rate was very, very low. So that's why I'm saying that
Yeah.
when we go and design the system, it's going to be a fairly large system.
Well, you may know this already, but the Cornell Cooperative Extension recommends plants that are water loving and can be perfect for a spot like that.
So I am working with the Ulster County Health Department, the other agency we have involved in this project. We met with the New York State DOT for the driveway, and we're keeping that in the exact location it is today. And we are, as far as the plan goes, right now, we would make some improvements out towards the street, and we would pave a portion of that driveway, and the rest of it would be a gravel base.
Do you have to work with the DEC in any way for that floodplain? And I think you've got a trout stream back there.
Yes, we will have to do protection. And on the diagram that I do have for the site, we have silt fences shown and other environmental protection features shown on that site. Now, I will possibly work up in Albany with the DEC on this project and locally with put corners there. So that's all part of this process that will be ongoing if, in fact, we move forward with this project.
I can,
Thank you.
since we seem to have started talking a little bit about the site, let me put the site plan up. How is that size? Is that too big, or should I make it a little smaller for people?
It's good.
Okay. So this is the proposed site. The other thing is, Paul, will you have more than 1 acre of disturbance with the possible new construction and the paving and anything?
Yes, we will.
Okay, so so as far as stormwater, you will be having to do a storm SWIP, and so that would involve DEC, and that the DEC would have to review that.
Yes, that's anticipated that we will do a SWIP for this project.
Okay, so now while we're on talking about the site plan, or actually Paul or Kanan or Mr. Dannenberg, do you want to walk us through the 10 numbered spaces and sort of tell us what your plan is for each of those, and then we can sort of go for questions from there?
All right, let's have Paul do it.
Okay.
All right, first of all, the access road is going to be maintained in the position that it is right now off of 209. We believe this is the best location, along with the representatives from the highway department. We will have to make an improvement here where we first come into the roadway with a new culvert going underneath the driveway. And I show some barriers on the left and right of that entrance. And those are protection while we're doing that work, so we don't have any silt coming out onto 209. As we go into the property, the first set of dotted lines underneath the numbers, that indicates a silt fence that will be maintained during the construction, reconstruction, and the construction of the parking areas. We do have a lawn area that will filter any loose material that comes across the site that becomes, during high rain conditions and so forth. But the silt fence will be our main means of defense against any erosion, leaving any soils and so forth, leaving the site. As we go back into the property, at the site number 1 is the building that's in question. And now this building is in an elevation, the finished floor elevation is at 180. Now the top of the stream, as measured in November of last year, was at 161. So we have a 19-foot elevation change between the top of the stream and the building number one. Building number one would be a one-family, two-bedroom residence if that is maintained. We are 43 feet or 42 feet away from the edge, the high edge of the stream. And we would like some consideration here. It is a very good structure. It's one of the better structures on the site. It's a one-family house. It will remain a one-family house. And it would just be, environmentally sound to try and keep that. I say environmentally sound because we're keeping all this material that would have to basically be disposed of. I don't believe that it would be worthwhile to recycle any of the material there. We have siding, we have flooring material, we have roofing, and it's all in very good shape. This is one of the few buildings that could almost be re-inhabited immediately.
Paul, can I ask you a question about that?
Yes.
So I hear you on the materials and the soundness of the building. So as just someone, and I love the concept of this project, creating, fair priced housing that is rentals. I think, this is definitely, something that our community needs. But I just want to make sure it's done safely. We are vulnerable to weather events. And, it's been a while since it happened, but we have had, our community has been affected by flooding. So I'm just curious on that building number one, would you be willing to raise it up? Like, in areas that, since it is so close to the flood district and so close to the stream, is that something that would be feasible in this project?
It would be feasible, but if you look at the FEMA maps, that does not fall within the floodway, nor does it fall within the flood zone, okay? So if it wasn't a floodway, I would recommend, yes, we would do something. Well, if it wasn't a floodway, it couldn't exist. We don't want to have a structure in the floodway, but we have plenty of structures throughout the county in a flood zone, okay? And this is on the edge of the flood zone, but it is not in the flood zone itself. If you, and I did send a copy of the limits of the flood zone, and building number one does fall outside of that. And keep in mind also now, building number one, the finished floor elevation is at 180. Building number 7, which was the old former hotel, is at a lower floor elevation than building number 1. So this site slopes from the right to the left, and building number 7, number 6, number 3 are not in the flood zones. They're not, even being considered in this. And the buildings adjacent to this on adjacent sites are actually at a lower elevation than building number 1. Yes, building number 1 is a small building and it could be raised, but I don't see any benefit in raising that building. Now,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Building number 2 is a very poor structure. Okay, when I went out with the group and really evaluated these structures, I said, building number 2 has got to go. Now, this touches on, that 100-foot setback, but it's a judgment call that we made as a concerned, developer of the site, that building number 2 is just not going to be feasible to rehab, and it's not going to make a good, unit for living in. Okay, number 3.
Could I stop you 1 second and go back to 1 with a quick question?
Sure.
You said it's not in the floodway, but it is in the flood zone. Would you consider, and I know this has been done because those FEMA flood zones, those mappings are done based off not on-site data. Those maps are based on best guesses. Would you consider submitting to FEMA a flood zone modification for this property? I know other engineers in front of our projects in the town have done this before. and then FEMA will review it and either say yes or no, we'll modify the flood zone accordingly because of this, because of, they'll take your actual delineation of elevations and soil conditions and everything else and determine in a more specific reality where the flood zone line is. Would you be willing to consider approaching that? Because then if we can figure out if one is out of the flood zone, then we're only dealing with the fact that it's within our own code's 100-foot buffer of the stream. And it's only one aspect of the code that we're addressing rather than two aspects.
We would certainly do that. In order to save the building, it's worthwhile endeavor to go through FEMA. And if that's what it takes to save that building, it would be an effort that we would be willing to go through.
Would it be worth moving the building? Since you're removing two and you're spatially changing, could you move it back toward 4, if I'm looking correctly?
If we had to move the building,
Structurally,
if we had to move the building, my vote would be to take the building down. It'd be very difficult to move the building.
okay,
These are old buildings.
yes.
So as I was saying, building number 2 is going to be removed. Building number 3 would be a 2-family, 2 bedrooms. Building number 4 is in very good condition. Somebody started rehabbing building number 4. That would also be a duplex. Number 6 would be a duplex. Number 7 would be a series of buildings, and that would be our largest concentration of units. And these would, in building number 7, all be 1-bedroom units. And behind building number 7, we would have our septic system would be, our actually leach field would be in that area. So adjacent to each of these numbered structures, we would have a septic tank, maybe 1,200 gallons, maybe 1,000 gallons, depending upon the number of bedrooms. And then we would send branch lines to a common dedicated septic area. Now, next to building number 4 is our communal well. And you can see I have a large circle drawn around that. And that is a 200-foot radius. And that's why our septic system is where it's located. So I clear that 200-foot radius. For any common well, the requirement that the health department has is a 200-foot clearance for any septic system. Now, they said they may, because it's in existing structures, they may limit this to only 100 feet. Myself, as I feel more comfortable keeping that 200-foot separation. Okay. Number 10 and these are new structures that if we were to build on the site, these would be the locations, suitable locations for new buildings. They're away from the stream. They're easy to provide parking to. And we would also, each would represent a new front to 209. So that was the intent with those couple of buildings there.
And then number 8 is going to be it's an existing barn that you're going to use as like an equipment storage.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
How many 1-bedrooms in number 7?
I believe that's over on the right-hand side.
I think it was 6, if I remember correctly.
How many? Is it 6 in there?
6.
I can't, there, okay. It says 16 spaces or something there.
Yeah, that's the parking.
Spaces, that's
parking.
Yeah, it's not shown on this plan, but I believe I remember on the narrative, it was 6 units. Is that correct, Carrie?
Correct.
6 units.
Yeah.
Okay.
How many rooms is the current that building? How many unit rooms is it?
I think it's somewhere around 16 or 18.
So you're going to do your plan is to gut the entire interior and rebuild?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We were cutting the density in half, as I recall.
or more than
or
half.
more. Yeah, because
Yeah, you're
I
cutting
believe
it.
Carrie is probably right. It's probably closer to 16 units.
How much buildable area do you have, actually?
Square footage, it hasn't been calculated. At this point, I could give you a number in a day, but I did not calculate it, each of the square footage.
I'm asking because of the density factor, and you can't use in the floodplain area. So it would be necessary, in my mind, to know what acreage is left for buildings and what is the density on those on that acreage.
Okay, we have
That
15
was calculated.
yeah, we have 15.4 acres, and I broke out the areas that were in the floodplain and gave in a narrative the remaining portion of the site.
Wasn't bad.
And basically, if you took the site in total, 15.4,
Right,
okay, we
right.
were hoping to get 17 units on the site, okay? And now we subtract the number of units that it's okay. I don't want to contradict myself. That's why I'm hesitant to.
I know that I have not seen the rest of these things.
I sent all these to all the board members last Saturday, the stuff, just so you should have it.
I did go through all the stuff, but I don't recall the acreage that was left.
That's what
No,
I'm looking to see right now, I remember reading it somewhere, and I just have to figure which page it was on. I'm sorry. I'm trying to discover that.
And we had dedicated the property to the
Go back, Mike.
to the east
Going to
as the recreational area.
Yeah, I don't think it was in this. This is just the description that he just talked through of what each
Exactly.
building will be.
I didn't see the number of buildable acres that they were using versus the 15.4, and that's what I want to know.
Well, the one point to bring up is the floodplain is not zero density. It is, our code says you cannot build at a greater density than 2 acres per dwelling unit. You can build in a floodplain as long as your living space is out of the floodplain. The issue with our code is that we have a restriction of 100-foot setback from any named stream, that we do not allow structures within that 100 feet. Within the floodplain, and that's why I asked the question, if he would ask the FEMA to better designate or propose a modifications to the flood zone to FEMA, they may sign off that building is not in the floodplain. And then the only discussion we have to have is whether we feel like it can be within the 100 feet, the benefit of leaving an existing building versus breaking our own code.
Well, if he's suggesting 17 units and they're supposed to be 2 acres per unit, that's 34 acres.
No, it's only 2 acres in the floodplain. It's 1 acre per unit for a B zone district. So
1 per acre.
Correct.
So
So right now, B, he would have 15. Now, we as the town board, as part of this EEO process, we have both the ability and the right to vary the law based on the rewards of the project. This is why it's coming through us as an EEO, is we can look at the benefits to the community, the benefits to the town, and what it can bring. And we have the ability, just like with the last project, we gave them more uses on their property than they were allowed under traditional zoning.
So you don't have to follow the 5 criteria for the zoning exactly to the letter, so it's not arbitrary and capricious?
This is not
What you're doing here is creating a new zone.
I get that, Mary Lou. I get that. But
And when you create a new zone, that zone you would put what the density that you feel is appropriate. Now, maybe you'll feel that as it is now is appropriate. You can do that. But if you feel it's appropriate to give them more units per acre, you can do that as well. So it's something that you guys will discuss as a board in reviewing the application once it's finalized.
Yeah, I do remember, Paul, seeing that document that you sent about the the percentage of acres in the flood area as opposed to not, but
The percentage, and I didn't see it, Mike. I didn't.
Yeah.
That's why I'm
yeah,
asking.
I may have seen it at the planning board. I'm trying to look and see if we got it. Unless it was with,
I know I have a copy of it and I will go through my minutes. I just don't want to say a number tonight and
And
Understood.
contradict yourself. I understand, sir.
Yep,
I
yep.
understand.
so that is certainly creating the density is one of the things that we as a board will need to discuss. We will need to, the standard density, if this was not in any floodplain, would be 15 units. There is a percentage of the property in the floodplain. Then the question we have to ask is, do we limit the entire density of that percentage? Or do we only consider the fact that only one building is going to be in the floodplain? Because if all his buildings were out of the floodplain, I think we could give him a full 15, just like in standard zoning. If you're not building in the floodplain, you still have 15 acres. The density for building is only for building in the floodplain, not if you're not building. So really the discussion centers around property number one, or dwelling number one is, do we allow it to stay where it is? Do we move it? Do we say take it down and build something in place of it? Or do we say take it away? Part of the benefit of this code is to adaptive reuse of existing buildings. So I'm just throwing out all the questions that we can consider. I'm not saying any one is better or stronger than the other one.
Mary Lou, would you suggest this, we do this, but should we also meet with the two boards, the planning and us?
This will be referred to the planning board
Okay,
because it's a zoning change, and it will be referred
yeah,
to the Ulster County Planning
That's-
Board.
okay.
That's what I was starting with the process, but we got sidetracked on the site plan. So the process
So-
for this is if we're going to do we approve a zoning change where we set things like the density, the setbacks, the building standards for the property. We can vary the existing B code as we see fit. We then have to do a referral to the county planning board and to the local planning board as an EEO zoned property. We also have to have our own public hearing.
Right.
If we then adopt the EEO and say, yes, you can be in an EEO district, we then send them to the planning board for a second review for site plan. It is not as stringent as a special use because we have already done some of the basic reviews. The planning board then is reviewing it for health and safety. They're looking at water, they're looking at septic, they're looking at stormwater, they're looking at parking, lighting, the nuts and bolts, as it were, of the site plan. That also has to have another referral to the county planning board and another public hearing. It is, this is not necessarily to sidetrack the original intent. What it is that benefit of not following traditional zoning for the benefit of the community.
And Mike, one of the tools at our disposal is a gateway meeting also, correct?
Correct. And actually, what I would, thank you for saying that, because what I would like to do tonight, I think the plan is far enough along that with the board's permission, and I would ask for a resolution to do that tonight, that I request the county to put together a gateway meeting, which would bring in the planning board, DOT, the health department, DEC, and the town board to all have the initial discussion. That would involve the planning board in the initial discussion. We come up with sort of a best plan, and then if we do that before our next meeting of the town board with the developer, then they would have time to react appropriately to any changes or anything that the county suggests. And then we get a more finalized site plan before we refer it to the county. So I
My
really,
con-
go ahead.
Because what my concern was at this point, are we, because it was suggested to this company, have we somehow compromised the autonomy of the planning board? That's a question kind of for Mary Lou. I
No,
mean,
absolutely not. Absolutely not. You, as the legislative
Okay.
board, you can rezone, and that's what's being asked of you.
Okay.
So that's not a problem at all, B.
Thank you. I just was curious which came first, the chicken or the egg. Did the planning board have to ask
no,
us for this? Do we have to ask for this so that there's no confusion as to the autonomy here?
No,
Well, we are working in conjunction because we have to refer it for the EEO for comment to the planning board and to the county planning board. So absolutely, we're working in conjunction. And if we have a gateway meeting, absolutely, we're working in conjunction. All we're doing is the zoning, which
Yes.
as part of the zoning, we're setting the standards for that zoning district. And as Mary Lou said, we are not required to follow the B zoning district. We can certainly start with that and modify accordingly for this specific project. The zoning standards are not going to be the same for any two EEO projects. Every project is reviewed on its own merits.
Oh, you're muted, B.
I was going, yes, I agree.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Can I ask? Can I go back to building one for just a minute?
Sure. Let me.
I'm just wondering if it. I just want to know if you have any idea when that was built. I'm guessing it was before we did COs, so I probably can't find that out from the building department.
Is that
But
the
I'm-
two-story house?
Yes, it is a two-story house.
I'm going to say 1950. I'm
Okay,
gonna guess, and somebody will tell me if I'm even close.
I think it's a lot
So-
older. It appears to be like turn of the century.
30, really? That much? Okay.
And
I'm not sure
because
what the property was.
just something for you to consider is that building has been there since, we'll say at least 1950, maybe 1900. I assume
Yeah.
turn of the century means that other one a long time ago.
But I was giving it 50 years. That's where I was going. 50.
Right.
yeah, it's probably a lot older.
Right, and has there been flooding or, that's something for you folks to think about.
I
Oh,
also
we.
have a question about building one. There was actually some confusion on our side. This came up when we did go in front of the planning board, and somebody said to us that it was in the flood zone. But when I look on FEMA, I don't know if I can share a screen, but I'm at the website right now.
Yeah, I can. Let me give you. Hang on. Let me stop share and give you screen sharing capability.
Okay, if I click the button.
Was that you, Paul, or Kanan?
Come on.
Okay. Sorry about that. I heard a voice, but I didn't have your pictures. So let me make you co-host, and you should be able to share now.
Okay.
Because I looked at it on Parcel Viewer, and admittedly, Parcel Viewer is not a good source because the picture image does not match up well with the property lines. They are shifted sometimes by as much as 40 or 50 feet. Are you able to share?
I think I can. Let me just click on this.
Yeah, down on the bottom, you should be able to click share screen.
You know what? It's telling me I had to go in my settings. I would have to quit Zoom and I'd probably be kicked off the call.
Oh, yeah, you would be.
But without doing that, when we go on to the FEMA, and we've done this with exercise with Paul a couple times, and I'm at the website right now. You can zoom in, and there's the floodway, of course, and then outside of the floodway, there's flood zone, zone AE. And then outside of that, it's the area of minimal flood hazard, zone X. And all along 209, all these buildings are in primarily zone X, the area of minimal flood hazard, as are all the buildings on this particular piece of land, apparently. And that includes building 1. We were a little bit surprised when in the planning board meeting, I think it might've been the chair of planning said that was within the flood zone, because we can't find that,
Well,
Maybe she was on a different map.
she probably
Canon.
was looking on Parcel Viewer, which I'm about to try to bring up on the screen. Let me see if it'll allow me to share.
I have the FEMA map open right now, and the FEMA map shows that building outside of the flood zones. It is in zone X or the minimum flood
Okay.
area.
Are you guys seeing the
yes.
the flood map now? So bear in mind that, as I said, that the base maps do not overlap well. But if I turn on the flood layer on and off, let me turn it off. It is not in the flood zone,
No.
to my knowledge.
And the area that's in the flood zone to the right, that is going to be our designated 25% recreation area. So there is no plan to build in that flood zone, that blue area.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I mean, we would probably want confirmation from you overlaying the FEMA map more appropriately over the site plan. But based on this drawing and what you're saying, I would believe that it's not in the flood zone, that the only issue is that it is within 100 feet of the high water mark of the stream, which our code does not allow. But that does not appear that it's in the, as a matter of fact, back here, the barn is maybe even closer, but the barn is not a habitable area. So it doesn't matter.
If indeed this building was built in the time frame you think it was, I'm just guessing. I wasn't born yet in 1950, surprisingly enough. But if it was built as a farm many years prior, they were smart enough not to get flooded out. They usually looked at their properties pretty closely, and they made sure that their homes weren't going to flood, or at least they tried to. So I don't know if that helps at all or not.
Is the septic outside of the?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right
the
where the
septic would be,
vestibule
can you see my cursor, Aaron?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
septic would be right in here.
So I think then to me, the two issues that like we would want to consider, and I like the idea of a gateway meeting, because I think getting everybody together, then you can sort of anticipate. The two, I think what Mike said is the 42 feet away from a protected stream, which I think is considerable issue. And then the other would be the density, because some of the property, I see the map. So I think, yes, I'd like confirmation, but I see what you guys are seeing. When I looked at it before, it looked like a corner of the building was in it, but I didn't zoom in like that. So I see what you guys are seeing. But some of the property is in the floodway. So just the density, what is the density actually that we would be varying, or not varying? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to use that word, because that's not what this is, but.
You're asking the same thing I did. How much
Right.
of the leftover property are they building on?
Right. But remember, Aaron, the density in the floodplain doesn't go away. It just means if you want to build within the floodplain, you can't build at a density greater than one dwelling per 2 acres.
I
So
see what you're saying. You're saying
they still have 15 acres of property. They just can't, if they want to build a property in the floodplain, then that portion of it can only be 1 per 2 acres. it doesn't mean that the whole property, the density of the entire property is reduced if they're not building in the floodplain.
And I'd like to confirm that we have no plans or intentions of building any structure within the floodplain.
So back to then, so under traditional zoning at 15 point, what was it, 6.4, I said? 15.4 acres, they would be allowed 15 dwelling units. They're asking for 17, and potentially asking for a couple more if we are open to do that. I think, have you investigated from your water and septic standpoint how many more you would want to consider, or have you not investigated that yet?
I think the maximum number for that site and the stop gate here is going to be the septic design. I think
Correct.
20 is going to be the maximum for that site.
Okay. So it just in our discussion point, you know, you're currently asking 17. You might, based on your follow-up with the septic, ask for maybe one more building with 3 units in it or something along those lines.
Mhm.
Would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay.
So instead of a duplex, a triplex or triplex, whatever you'd say, something like that?
Yes.
Okay. Does the board feel like we have enough information from them to go ahead and do a referral for a request for a gateway meeting? I wouldn't say let's hold off on any public hearings, obviously, any referrals to the county planning board or the town planning board or any other agency. But if the board's okay with this as a preliminary, I think having the gateway meeting will get the county and everybody else's perspective on this project. They already have had conversation with DOT and health department, so they're familiar already. So I'm sure Dennis Doyle can get them into the meeting. So I'm hoping that he can put something together in the next couple of weeks, that then by the next time we meet sometime in March to talk about this, because I wouldn't put this on one of our regular agendas, because obviously we need to try to treat this like a planning board application, in that it's going to take some time and discussion. So we would do another special meeting like this sometime in March to have the next steps, and by then we could certainly have had a gateway meeting.
If we're ready.
Actually, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion that the board allows the supervisor to refer this project to the county planning department with request for a gateway meeting.
I'll second.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is there any other discussion on that?
Yeah, I just have a question about that process. So would we have one representative from the town board at that meeting?
Normally the supervisor goes, but as long as we don't have more than 3. So if any other board member wants to be the other person, full disclosure, I kind of will be doing double duty because of the county. I'm the town's local county planning board rep as well, but I would have to recuse myself from any votes on the county planning board. I can only vote on our board, not on the county.
I would be
So-
interested in attending if I'm needed.
It can be any one of the 4 of you. It can't be 2 of us. We can't have 3 members though. So
Aaron, if you'd like to, I mean,
we don't have to designate that person right now. We can come up with that answer later.
I also felt like B was asking some really good questions too. And I think the only thing I wanted to say is whoever was there, if we could submit questions, like concerns that we had that we would hope would come up in that meeting as board members. That's all I was kind of getting at.
Okay.
If we wanted to have 3 of us, could we put out public notice? That will
Not for a gateway meeting.
Thank
I don't think. Mary Lou, you want to weigh in on that? Because it's not our meeting, it's the county's meeting. Did we lose Mary Lou?
I bet we did. We might have lost her.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we take a vote, Mike?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mary Lou just texted me, but it turns out it's a spam text from Mary Lou.
Oh,
Because it was asking me about my car warranty, but with Mary Lou's name. And I don't think Mary Lou cares about my car warranty right now.
probably not.
Kate, would you please do a roll call vote?
Councilwoman Anowen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hagen Depew,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock,
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Aye. Okay. So what I will do then for the Kanan, if you can maybe email me a list of email addresses of the people from your agency who should attend that meeting, I will forward that with a letter of request to the county planning department asking that they put this together sometime in the next couple weeks. They then take it from there and we'll send out an invite to everybody who wants to, who should attend. And we'll get input from, I'll suggest to them that the DEC, the health department and the DOT be involved. Is there anybody else that you are thinking of that should be involved from a county or state standpoint?
We leave it to the discretion of you
Okay.
guys.
Yeah, there's no other agencies that you need approval from or anything though, do you? That you're aware of that I'm not thinking of?
Well, we will need something from the DEC.
Right, yeah, okay, I will include the DEC if possible. In the interim, if you can get us a better narrative that incorporates those first four elements of the EEO, the A, B, C, and D of the description of what the EEO is, and also get me a clean part one of the EAF form, either the one you sent to the town planning board or a new one, whichever you prefer.
Mhm.
And then because I don't believe I have that. I just think I have the site plan and your original narrative. I don't think I have an EAF.
Okay.
Then I will forward all that to the county and with a request for the gateway meeting and we'll move forward.
Great. Thank you. We look forward to that.
Okay. Any board members have any other questions? Okay. Kanan, Mr. Dannenberg, do you guys have any questions for us?
At this time,
Okay. Well, we thank you for your time. We thank you for your project and we'll see where this all heads.
okay, thank you very much. And we appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Moving next on to our agenda, there are a couple resolutions that are have become urgent that they be adopted. I apologize for putting resolutions on this meeting, but these involve the Algerville Firehouse. And the quicker we resolve them, the quicker we can get the bids finalized. And all this came together on Friday after our last meeting. So the first resolution is Resolution A. I'm not going to read all the whereases. I'm just going to start with the last whereas. The lowest responsible bidder for general construction services is Meyer Contracting Corporation, 12 Charles Street, Pleasant Valley, New York, 12569 in the amount of $1,235,000. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Rochester, New York selects and awards a contract agreement to Meyer Contracting Corporation in the amount of $1,235,000 contingent upon GOSER, that's Governor's Office of Storm Recovery, review and authorization to execute said contract agreement. Do I have that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Kate, or any questions or discussion?
Yes, did they show us a bond? Do they have bonding for $1,235,000?
Yes, all that is required, but this is all managed through the state. They will have all that bonding because the project money is being awarded by us. We have to adopt the resolution, but
Yes.
it's all handled by the grant manager, Mr. Blankenship, and all that bonding. They are required. I believe it's a 10. Hang on, I'll tell you. It might even be in the resolution. It's not in the resolution, but they have the appropriate amount of bonding. I believe it's 10%, but maybe I'm wrong on that. I shouldn't speak out of turn because I don't remember, but with state money, nothing happens without all the checks and balances.
So bonding is covered under the state at
Correct.
this point, is what you're
Correct.
saying. Thank you.
Yep, and we are protected. We are only adopting this resolution because what happens is we are the managers of the project. The state gives us the money, and then we pay the bill. So we have to accept the bid because we are the payee.
Sorry, Mike, I got one other question. Cost
Yep.
overruns. If there's a cost overrun,
If there are change orders, they have to do change orders throughout the project. And every change order must be approved. There is a 10% set aside that is held back for that that's where I got the 10% from. I'm sorry. I was saying 10% bonding. It is a 10% of that is set aside for contingent.
I think they have to show that they've got $1,235,000 set aside in a
I
bond.
believe you're right. I believe you're correct. I think I misspoke. The 10% is for the cost overrun that they must set aside. So,
I'm back. My internet went out. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
What I missed?
We finished up. We did a resolution for a gateway meeting. I'll be checking times,
Great.
or actually Rob
Rob
Leibowitz
will,
will be
right.
checking times. We're moving on to the Algerville Firehouse resolutions.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay.
We did have a
Kate?
question, but it might not be relevant anymore. If we were having a gateway meeting, could we have more than 3 town board meetings?
Oh, yes.
Nope.
Town board members if we put
2.
out? No.
Chris wanted to know if we could advertise it, and I said it's not our meeting, so we can't.
Well, I mean, yeah, you'd have to advertise it and then you'd have to allow anyone to go to it. And that's kind of too much for this sort of meeting.
The
So,
county probably would not want to entertain that,
Right.
I guess.
right.
Point of
So-
order. Point of order. We have a motion on the table.
Thank you.
Yay.
I didn't,
Roll call vote, please, Kate. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that.
Very good.
Councilwoman Anowen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hagen DePew,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock,
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Aye. Okay, the next bid, Resolution B, this is for the electrical contracting. Whereas the lowest responsible bidder for electrical contracting services is Meal Electric Company, 74 South Main Street, Pearl River, New York, in the amount of $197,489. Do I have that motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second? I'll
I'll
second.
second. Okay, whoever.
Kate, roll call vote, please.
Councilwoman Anowen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hagen DePew,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock,
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Aye. Next is Resolution C. This is for the mechanical construction. Whereas the lowest responsible bidder for mechanical construction services is T. McElligott of 589 River Street, Troy, New York, in the amount of $417,000. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Rochester, New York selects and awards a contract agreement to T. McElligott in the amount of $417,000 contingent upon GOSA review and authorization to execute said contract agreement. I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further questions? Kate, roll call vote?
Councilwoman Anowen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hagen DePew,
Aye.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock,
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
Aye. There were no bids on the plumbing contract that will be then requested that the general contractor subcontract with another vendor. It often happens that sometimes these smaller projects, things like that, nobody wants to bid on it. The general contractor will then assume will do a change order to add the plumbing to their responsibility, and that's fairly standard. Next, the award of the bid for the fire alarm system. We received 6 bids. Kate circulated them to us. Kate, just verifying that there was a correction from your original circulation. Alert alarms, there was a mistake in the number that was taken from their bid. It was not a final number, it was just a portion. So their correct number is 16,471.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So we received 6 bids ranging from $16,471 and a high bid of $36,141.06. I did reach out to Mr. Farrell, our fire inspector. He informed me after looking at the drawings, or what was submitted, not the drawings, excuse me, what was submitted, that he said he knew a lot about how these operate, but not the actual construction of them. And so he declined to offer any recommendations. He apologized. His direct quote was, "I thought I knew more about them until I looked at these drawings and I realized I didn't know as much about them as I thought I did." He knows how to inspect them and he knows what to look for, but he doesn't know how to do the construction of them. So that being said, we have a pretty big disparity between 1 and 2. Mary Lou, I'm gonna let you sort of weigh in on this, please.
Okay, Mike had kind of explained things to the afternoon we spoke, and it looks like the lowest bid, complies with what we put out, but it doesn't look like it's as detailed as the others. You don't have to award a bid. You can reject all bids and then put it out to bid with some more specificity. Or if you'd like, I can do some research. We talked about whether we can contact the low bidder to make sure that they realize what they're getting. They're the only company that did not come and actually look at the physical plant. So they may not really realize what it is. And, but I'm not sure, I've never had this situation before. So I didn't want to just opine something without doing research. So if you'd like to wait, I can do some more research. You can reject the bids, put it back out, like I said, with more specificity, but do you know what kind of specificity to put in without going to an engineer and paying them a lot of money?
Right.
So, if you want me to do the research, I'll do that. I told Mike, unfortunately, I couldn't do it today. My schedule was just a bit cramped.
I think based on the fact that the other 5 are all within a
So that's kind of where we
ballpark of
stand. Or,
each
I mean,
other,
you can
there's a
award it
little-
to the low
yeah.
bidder.
Do we have to award it to the low bidder?
She
You
froze
have
up.
to award it to the
Oh.
lowest responsible bidder or reject all bids. And, there's always a question, what's responsible? Is it responsible because they didn't come look at it? They don't know.
Yeah,
But
well,
that's not
that's
not
my-
how responsible is defined.
Really, if they
No.
don't come to look, you
We
can't.
didn't tell them they
disqualify.
had to come to look. We didn't
We didn't mandate a site
say
visit,
come
which is
look,
not,
or,
you don't have to.
I mean, that's, Mary Lou, you were
and
saying,
maybe,
you know-
who knows? Maybe they've done 1,000 of these.
but to Mary Lou's point, I mean,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
oh, just that earlier you were like, said something along the lines of that maybe we might not know what other levels of specificity, but coming to do a site visit could be something that we require in the next, if we
Right.
decided to reject them, and that way we would at least know
Right.
then
Mhm.
for
Yeah, Mike had suggested that
I
very thing.
suggested that,
maybe
Mary Lou
that-
points out that the downside is these bids are all now public knowledge. Everybody knows the low price. I did not include the mandatory site visit in because it is not, I looked at other fire install bids that were out there, and none of them mandated a site visit. We did give them a square footage of the building space. We told them a breakdown of the number of rooms, and they bid it accordingly and chose not to come. We can't, in Mary Lou's opinion, we can't say that them not coming is not responsible. And I guess I would agree with that.
Right.
So, now, of course, now if we award them the contract and they come back and say, oh, we can't do it for this, we can void the contract and
You
either
guys do
rebid
have-
or go
right.
to the next person. But
You do have that, you can
we have that
release them from
ability.
it.
So there's kind of three options. We can award to the low bid. And if they can't, if in future, if they decide they can't really do it for that, then we can void the contract, or we never get the contract actually, in which case we award it to somebody else. We could rebid everything, or we could do nothing tonight, let Mary Lou do a little more research. We did not put a timeline of awarding this bid. Many of them said that their contract is good for 30 days, but we could certainly
Right, and that's typical.
contact all of them and ask for an extension.
We are okay with our insurance company though, right?
We are okay with, our insurance company is happy that we are pursuing this. They have not put a time frame on it. The fact that we move forward with this has satisfied them for this year. So, and we did put in that it must be built, but I think it was within, I shouldn't say, we did put a time frame.
Yeah,
It
you,
must be
you had a
completed
date in
by
there.
upon signature of contract. And it was a relatively short
And-
time.
I mean, but maybe you do want to award it and then see if they can really do it or not. And if not, then you can just come back, save having to go out to bid again.
Yeah.
And you can award it to the next lowest bidder.
Mhm. That's a good idea.
You do have an audit
That may-
meeting too. Maybe
We do have our audit meeting in,
Yeah.
Decide
what,
then. 17
days, 2.5 weeks. So, no, 2 weeks from today.
Well,
Today's the
Mary Lou
11th. Yeah,
could,
2 weeks from today, we have our audit meeting. So,
Mary Lou could do her work and we could still discuss it at the audit meeting with her input.
yep.
Mhm.
So, then we'll take no action and we'll let Mary Lou review it and we'll
And we'll talk at the audit
we'll
meeting.
talk it in 2 weeks. And the one contractor who has been emailing me almost daily asking, I'll make sure to let him know that we did not come to a decision and that we will take it up at another meeting. So, okay, perfect. I have one more resolution. This is authorizing the supervisor to execute a contract. Adam, I'll leave it to your opinion if you want to recuse yourself on this one. If you want to do that before I read the resolution, it's up to you.
Yeah, I will recuse myself. Thank you.
Okay. The town board authorizes the town supervisor to execute a contract between the town of Rochester and Rebecca Paddock Stange for the services of consultant to the code enforcement office for a 1-month period commencing on February 8, 2021 at a rate of $30 per hour contractually to assist in the training of the zoning coordinator. All hours of work shall be certified by the code enforcement officer as to the accuracy.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it. Are there any questions or discussion?
Just, she has the time to do this.
He does. That is why I didn't have it ready for us last Thursday. She wanted a couple days of trying out the job first before she said yes or no. She got back to me on Monday or Tuesday of this week and said, yeah, Mike, I think I can do it. The number is what it is because it's contractual and she is responsible for all her own taxes from this and would get a 1099 from us. So she's gonna,
Go ahead,
sorry?
I'm sorry.
she's gonna do a few hours in the evening and some weekend hours with the new
Okay, you-
secretary.
You have February 8th.
Yes, which was this past week. She probably is gonna start like tomorrow.
Well, do you
So-
want to change the date so that it starts tomorrow and she
Well,
has the month?
She may have already done some hours. I'm not entirely sure if she did some already yesterday. That's why I started it at the beginning of the week this week for a 1 month period. I wasn't quite clear if she did or she may have done some hours with a misunderstanding with me that she could start without before we had an approval.
Do
But
you
she
want
also
a cap on
understands
the
that if
number
we-
of hours?
She understands if we don't approve it that she would not get paid for those hours.
That it was voluntary.
Yeah.
Do you want to put a cap on the number of hours?
I thought about it. I sort of figure it's going to determine itself based on her availability. She is not available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So she is only available in the evening and on weekends.
Okay.
I think whatever she can give us is valuable. So I'd really not rather, the only cap I did was the 1 month period. If at the end of the month, we decide we need more, then we can take it up month to month. If somebody wants to put a cap on it, I don't have a great feeling either way. I didn't think we needed to.
She's not going to take advantage of it, believe
I was
me.
going to
don't believe
say,
she is.
she's as trustworthy a person as you're ever going to get,
Exactly.
for sure.
I didn't feel the need to put a cap on it.
Exactly.
And Jerry is going to monitor it for me. We discussed that, and he will verify the hours.
These are just the questions that the attorney has to ask,
Has
but
to
having
ask.
worked with Rebecca for a bazillion
Understood.
years, I get it.
Understood. Okay, so I have the motion. I did get a second before discussion. Okay, Kate, roll call vote?
Councilwoman Anowen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hagen DePew,
I am no better person to do the job.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock is recused, Supervisor Baden.
Aye. Okay, I will let her know it's official.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Actually,
No.
hang on, Chris. Erin had something she wanted to add to the agenda, but I already had printed, so I told her to just bring it up at the end. My apologies.
So this isn't a surprise necessarily. We've discussed this at length, but I wanted to make a motion to set the public hearing for the amendments to the comprehensive plan. Mike, if you do screen share, I can put it up if it's the same
Yep.
resolution we had before.
Yeah,
but-
let me give you screen share capability.
Okay. So whereas do you guys want me to read the whole thing?
Might not be a bad idea because then it's clear what was being proposed.
Okay. Whereas the town of Rochester convened the Comprehensive Plan and Land Use Code Review Committee on February 6, 2020, and whereas the committee has met and made written recommendations to the town board, and whereas the town board desires to amend the Comprehensive Plan appendices as follows: 1, to include the open space plan in its entirety; 2, to include the historic resources report in its entirety; 3, to include the natural heritage plan, pages 1 through 33; 4, to include the natural heritage plan appendix A, conservation, open area and critical environmental area maps, pages 62 through 71; 5, to include the natural heritage plan appendix B, Catskill Shawangunk Greenway corridor symposium summary report, pages 72 through 76; 6, to include the natural heritage plan table of figures and details on working groups, pages 77 through 82. And whereas the town board has circulated notice and the documents of such amendments to the Ulster County Planning Board, the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets, the Town of Rochester Planning Board, the Town of Rochester Environmental Conservation Commission, and the Town of Rochester Historic Preservation Commission with requests for comment, and therefore pursuant to New York State Town Law, Article 16, Section 272A, the town board requests the town clerk circulate and post notice of a public hearing to be held March 23rd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. to be held at the Harold Lipton Community Center, 15 Tobacco Road, Accord, New York, or via video conference in compliance with the governor's executive order 202.1 and successors
I
and
think you
request.
can stop there because I realized I double listed the town clerk posting notice.
Oh, yeah.
It's up above.
Yep, it is up
And I
above.
didn't catch it the first time from the original resolution.
But it says 2020 for the date, for March 23rd.
Correct.
Oh, yeah. So that should say 2021. To be held March 23rd, 2021. So I'll make that motion with that amendment.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Go ahead, Adam.
Okay. Discussion.
I know we've had a lot of discussion about this, but at our last meeting, we discussed at length that a lot of the issues that we're considering maybe to hold this up or make changes or adjustments aren't things that are in the public record. And I would like to have this process be open and transparent. And I believe the public hearing is a really great first step. And if something needs to, if we decide that we want to adjust or, whatever in response to that, then we can do that later. But I think this is the first step.
Mary Lou, can I ask a question? So the referrals were done before the initial public hearing, which was canceled. It is the exact same referral, or would be the exact same referral as the first time.
Yeah, no, they're valid. You don't have to
They're still
re-refer.
valid. We don't have to do re-referrals to all the various boards because it's the same.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. I wasn't sure on that. Any other board members want to have anything to say on it? Okay. Kate, I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Councilwoman Anowen,
Aye.
Councilwoman Hagen DePew,
No.
Councilman Hewitt,
Aye.
Councilman Paddock,
Aye.
Supervisor Baden.
I'm voting aye for the public hearing. I still think that there's questions that may need to be answered, but the public hearing may bring some of that information out. And I am voting yes for the public hearing. I'm on the fence about the actual outcome of this, but I agree. Let's hear what the public has to say. So the resolution passes 4-1. And so with that, Aaron, do you want to stop sharing?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Aaron, can you just email that to me?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris, now motion. Unless, does anybody else have anything else they want to bring up? If not,
Yes, I would like to filibuster for about an hour.
motion to adjourn then in that case.
Everyone.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Thank you all. We'll see you at the workshop meeting.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye, everybody.
Good
Bye.
night.